What's good? Happy freaking Friday, everybody. It's your boy, back again. It's been a while. It's been away for a while, but I'm back now for Mystery Blue Book. I know. I know what you're thinking. Justin, you have a set schedule. You're supposed to follow it. I suck at following my own schedules. But I'm back, and this is the second to last episode of the debut series, of course, of Mystery Blue Book, where, of course, I talk about UFOs and alien incidents. Tonight's, you've probably heard of. If you haven't, probably because you don't follow UFOs and aliens, and that's okay. I am here to educate. I am going to be talking about one of the most famous UFO cases of all time, the Betty and Barney Hill incident. Because if I'm going to talk UFOs, this is pretty much a no brainer to talk about. Why didn't I lead off with this? Because that's too obvious. About what order I put stuff in doesn't matter. Tonight, I will discuss Betty and Barney Hill. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the latest installment of Mystery Blue Book, the Betty and Barney Hill incident. I don't know how long this is going to be. It might be a bit doozy, so I might try to condense if I can, just because there's a lot of stuff in this. Betty and Barney Hill were an American couple who claimed that they were abducted by extraterrestrials in a rural portion of the state of New Hampshire from September 19th to the 20th in 1961. See, as many times as I have seen and heard of this case, I'm kind of crooked. There we go. I never knew that they were from New Hampshire. I never paid any freaking attention. I'm trying to not show my TV. That's just blue. I never knew that they were from New Hampshire. Not that that's important, but it's kind of close to me, so kind of interesting. The incident came to be called the Hill abduction and the Zeta Reticuli incident because two ufologists connected to the star map shown to Betty Hill with the Zeta Reticuli system. Okay, so they showed her the okay. Their story was adapted into the best-selling 1966 book, The Interpreted Journey, and NBC's 1975 television film, The UFO Incident. I would like to point out something that it I don't. I imagine of all the times that this has ever been documented for Betty and Barney Hill, nobody ever addresses it. I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna throw it out there. This is 1961. Betty is white and Barney is black. I know that has nothing to do with the incident, but I'm just saying, like, maybe it does. Before we even get into this, like an interracial couple in the early 60s, like, that's that is absolutely wild. Like, good for them. First of all, good for them. But also, it kind of makes me sorry. My nose is all stuffy. It kind of makes me wonder if their incident wasn't taken seriously by enough people because of that, which which of course seems foolish to me. But I'm just throwing it out there because I'm thinking of everything. I'm thinking of this before we even get into this. So it makes me wonder if people back in the day when this happened didn't take them seriously because they were an interracial couple. I could be totally wrong. Will we come across this? I actually don't know. So let's get back into it. Most of Betty Hill's notes, tapes, and other items have been placed in a permanent collection at the University of New Hampshire, her alma mater. In July 2011, the New Hampshire Division of Historical Resources marked the site of the alleged craft's first approach with a historical marker. According to a variety of reports given by the Hills, the alleged UFO sighting happened about 10:30 p.m. September 19th, 1961. The Hills were driving back to Portsmouth from a vacation in Niagara Falls and Montreal. Just south of Lancaster, New Hampshire, Betty claimed to have observed a bright point of light in the sky that moved from below the moon and the planet Jupiter upward to the west of the moon. You could see Jupiter from looking up into the sky. Is that a how, how many times have it, how many times does that happen? While Barney navigated U.S. Route 3, Betty reasoned that she was observing a falling star, only it moved upward. Because it moved erratically and grew bigger and brighter, Betty urged Barney to stop the car for a closer look, as well to walk their dog, Delcy. Barney stopped at a scenic picnic area just south of Twin Mountain. Betty, looking through binoculars, observed an odd-shaped craft flashing multicolored lights traveling across the face of the moon. Because her sister had several years earlier said she had seen a flying saucer, Betty thought it might be what she was observing. Though through binoculars, Barney observed what he reasoned was a commercial airliner traveling toward Vermont on its way to Montreal. However, he soon changed his mind, because without looking as if it had turned, the craft rapidly descended in his direction. This observation caused Barney to realize this object that was a plane was not a plane. No, Barney, it was not a plane, good sir. It wasn't a plane. The Hills said they continued driving on the quiet and isolated road, moving very slowly through Franconia Notch in order to observe the object as it came even closer. At one point, the object passed above a restaurant and a signal tower on top of a cannon on top of Cannon Mountain and came out near the Old Man in the Mountain. Betty testified that it was at least 1.5 times the length of a granite cliff profile, which was 40 feet long, and that seemed to be rotating. The couple watched as the silent, illuminated craft moved erratically and bounced back and forth in the night sky. So, the thing that we've all come to know for by being the UFO, of course, is the flying saucer. And this is exactly what they're saying. So, they weren't the first by any means, but this is the reason why when we first think of UFOs, we of course immediately think of flying saucers. Because, like Betty and Barney Hill, people before them, countless reports like, oh, it looked like a flying saucer, a saucer disc. They probably had a disc because back in the 50s, like, it was a saucer disc, don't you know? Like something like that. So, above 1 mile south of Indian Head, they said the object rapidly descended toward their vehicle, causing Barney to stop in the middle of the highway. The huge silent craft hovered about 80 to 100 feet above the Hills. 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air. Riding in style, I like it, and filled the entire field of view in the windshield. It reminded Barney of a huge pancake. Someone's hungry, carrying his pistol in his pocket. Oh, he's packing. He stepped away from the vehicle and moved closer to the object. Using the binoculars, Barney claimed to have seen 8 to 11 humanoid figures. Oh, whoa! Whoa! I didn't know that. I didn't know he saw figures in the freaking flying saucer. That's interesting. Who were peering out the craft's windows, seeming to look at him. In unison, all but one figure moved to what appeared to be a panel on the rear wall of the hallway that encircled the front portion of the craft. The one remaining figure continued to look at Barney and communicated a message telling him to stay where you are and keep looking. Barney had a recollection of observing the humanoid forms, wearing glossy black uniforms and black caps. Are they aliens or are they the men in black? Red lights on what appeared to be bat-wing fins began to telescope out of the sides of the craft, and a long structure descended from the bottom of the craft. The silent craft approached to what Barney estimated was within 50 to 80 feet overhead and 300 feet away from him. Barney, fearing Barney, fearing being captured by these creatures, ran back to the car terrified. As the hill sped away, they heard a strange beeping sound, and they fell into a daze. When they awoke, they realized they were now just outside of Concord. On October 21st, 1961, Barney reported to the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, NICAP, NECAP, NECAP, investigator Walter Webb, that the beings were somehow not human. So, I actually just watched something on the hills about a week ago, and it said that they didn't talk about what the heck they had seen initially. Like they didn't talk about the craft before seeing the figures. They didn't talk about any of that. They just said that they were driving. They saw the figure, not the figure, the flying saucer, and that they he stopped the car and they both blacked out, and then they found themselves in a totally different city. Arriving home about dawn, the Hills stated that they had some odd sensations and impulses they could not readily explain. Betty insisted their luggage be kept near the back door rather than the main part of the house. Their watches would never work again. Barney said that the leather strap for the binoculars was torn, though he could not recall it tearing. The toes of his best dress shoe the toes of his best dress shoes were scraped. Sorry. Barney said he was compelled to examine his genitals in the bathroom, though he found nothing unusual. They took long showers to remove possible contamination, and each drew a picture of what they had observed. So they both had recollection. They're like, we're doing stuff, and we don't know why we're doing it, but we do know why we're doing it, but we don't really want to talk about what happened yet because we're just so completely overwhelmed. That's just a crazy feeling, right? Perplexed, the Hills say they tried to reconstruct the chronology, chucked up on a word, of events as they witnessed a UFO and drove home. But immediately after they heard the buzzing sounds, their memories became incomplete and fragmented. As expected, after sleeping for a few hours, Betty awoke and placed the shoes and clothing she had worn during the drive into her closet, observing that the dress was torn at the hem, zipper, and lining. Later, when she retrieved the items from her closet, she noted a pinkish powder on her dress. She hung the dress on her clothesline and the pink powder blew away, but the dress was irreparably damaged. Jesus. She threw it away, but then changed her mind, retrieved the dress, and hung it in her closet. Okay, so she put it in her closet, got it out of the closet, saw some pink powder on it, which blew away. The dress was ruined. She threw it away, then put it back in the closet. Make up your mind, Betty. Over the years, 5 laboratories have conducted chemical and forensic analysis on the dress. What's on the dress? Alien cocaine? Yeah, yoo-hoo. There were shiny, concentric circles on the car's trunk that had not been there the previous day. Betty and Barney experimented with a compass, noting that when they moved it close to the spots, the needle would walk rapidly. But when they moved it a few inches away from the shiny spots, it would drop down. Walter N. Webb, a Boston astronomer and NICAP NECAP member, met with the Hills on October 21st, 1961. In a 6-hour interview, the Hills related all they could remember of the UFO encounter. Barney stated that he had developed a mental block and that he suspected there were some portions of the event that he did not wish to remember. Oh, so imagine trying to remember something. Then you remember it, and you're like, you know what? I'm not going to tell you that because I don't want to remember that. But you do. He described in detail all that he could remember about the craft and the appearance of the somehow not human figures aboard it. Webb stated that they were telling the truth, and the incident probably occurred exactly as reported, except for some minor uncertainties and technicalities that must be tolerated in any such observation, where human judgment is involved. Example given: exact time and length of visibility, apparent size of object and occupants, distance and height of object, etc. So, literally everything. 10 days after the alleged UFO encounter, Betty began having a series of vivid dreams, which continued for five successive nights. She stated that she experienced them with a degree of detail and intensity that she had never had before. After the fifth night, they stopped and never reoccurred, though they occupied her thoughts during the day. When she mentioned them to Barney, he was sympathetic, but not too concerned, and the matter was dropped. Betty did not mention them to Barney again. In November 1961, Betty began writing down details of her dreams. In one dream, Barney encountered a roadblock. She said she and Barney encountered a roadblock, and the men surrounded their car. She lost consciousness but struggled to regain it. She then realized that she was being forced by two small men to walk in a forest at night, and of seeing Barney walking behind her, though when she called to him, he seemed to be in a trance of sleepwalking. The men stood about 5 feet to 5 feet 4 inches tall and wore matching blue uniforms, with caps similar to those worn by military cadets. Oh, maybe it wasn't aliens at all. Maybe they were guinea pigs for a military government experiment. They appeared nearly human, with black hair, dark eyes, prominent noses, and bluish lips. Their skin was a grayish color. Another aliens. She and Barney were taken to their car, where the leader suggested that they wait to watch the craft's departure. They did so, and then resumed their drive home. So there's a lot of shit here. Like, there's a lot. I'll try to get. I won't click on everything, obviously, because I don't want to bore people here. On November 25th, 1961, the Hills were again interviewed at length by NECAP members, this time C.D. Jackson and Robert E. Homan. Having read Webb's initial report, Jackson and Homan had many questions for the Hills. One of their main questions was about the length of the trip. Although the Hills had noted that they had arrived home later than anticipated, the 178-mile drive should have taken them about 4 hours. They did not realize that they had arrived 7 hours after the departure from Colebrook. When Homan and Jackson noted this discrepancy to the Hills, the couple had no explanation, a phenomenon ufologists call missing time. The Hills claimed to recall almost nothing of the 35 miles of U.S. Route 3 between Lincoln Indian Head and Ashland. Both claimed to recall an image of a fiery orb sitting on the ground. Betty and Barney reasoned that it must have been the moon, but Homan and Jackson informed them that the moon had set earlier in the evening. The subject of hypnosis came up, and it was decided that it should be carried out in order to recover previously irretrievable memories. Barney was apprehensive, but thought it might help Betty put to rest what Barney described as the nonsense about her dreams. On November 23, 1962, the Hills attended a meeting at a parsonage of their church, where Captain Ben H. Sweat of the United States Air Force was a guest speaker. Having an interest in hypnosis, the Hills approached Sweat privately and related their strange encounter. Sweat was particularly interested in the missing time of the Hills' account. The Hills asked if he would hypnotize them to recover their memories, but Sweat declined and cautioned them against going to an amateur hypnotist such as himself. Interesting. He's like, no, 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 no. I'm an amateur. Under hypnosis, Betty's account was similar to her 5 dreams about the UFO abduction, with some notable differences, mainly pertaining to her capture and release. Also, the technology on the craft was different. The short men differed significantly in physical appearance, and the sequential order of the abduction differed. Barney and Betty's memories in hypnotic regression were, however, consistent with one another. When the series, the doctor that hypnotized him was named Benjamin Simon. When the series of hypnosis sessions were complete, Simon wrote an article about the Hills for the journal Psychiatric Opinion, examining his conclusion that the case was a singular psychological aberration, whatever that means. The Hills went back to their regular lives. They were willing to discuss the alleged UFO encounter with friends, family, and the occasional UFO researcher, but the Hills apparently made no effort to seek publicity. On October 25, 1965, a front page story in the Boston Traveler asked, UFO Chiller, did they seize couple? Reporter John H. Luttrell of the Traveler had allegedly been given an audio tape recording of the lecture the Hills had made in the Quincy Center in late 1963. Luttrell learned that the Hills had undergone hypnosis with Simon. He also obtained notes from confidential interviews that Hills had given to UFO investigators. On October 26th, the UPI picked up Luttrell's story and the Hills earned international attention. In 1966, writer John G. Fuller secured the cooperation of the Hills and Simon and wrote about the book, The Interrupted Journey, about the case. The book included a copy of Betty's sketch of the star map. The book was a quick success and went through several printings. Barney died of a cerebral hemorrhage on February 25, 1969, at age 46, after which Betty went on to become a celebrity in the UFO community. Betty died of cancer on October 17, 2004, at the age of 85, never having remarried. My goodness, huh? Isn't that crazy? So there you have it in a nutshell. There's a couple more things here, but it's about the star map, uninterrupted journey, people rebutting them, typical stuff for a UFO incident. I'm going to read one final thing, and then I will draw my conclusions. Barney Hill appeared in the episode of To Tell the Truth. Episode air date December 12, 1966. In 2004, Betty Hill's niece, Kathleen Martin, with nuclear physicist and ufologist Stanton Friedman, authored Captured concerning the case. In 1975, the UFO incident is a television dramatization of the Hills abduction and its aftermath, in which the Hills are portrayed by James Earl Jones and Estelle Parsons. This is fictional stuff. In 2018, the story formed the basis for a dinner party virtual reality exhibit at the Traveling Art Show, Wonder Spaces. The ninth episode of the 2019 History Channel television series Project Blue Book, entitled Abduction, is based on the Betty and Barney Hill incident. I watched that show. I don't remember that episode. And yeah, so there you have it, the Betty and Barney Hill case, incident, whichever you choose to refer it as. So I'm not going to sit here and give you a bunch of theories as to what I think could be what they saw, because I think it was a UFO. There's no reason for me to think otherwise. Like, also there was no mention of what I mentioned in the very beginning, which is probably a good thing. I just wanted to get it out there because in the event that we came across it, I had already touched on it. But since it never came up, we don't have to talk about it because it wasn't a thing. So here are my thoughts. Do I think they got abducted by an alien spacecraft? Yes. Do I think that they went into the alien? Do I think they got abducted by aliens? Yes. Because again, the timing, like, why would you? They weren't. They even said they weren't seeking publicity afterwards. They went back to their normal lives. It was the public and it was the UFO researchers that still wanted more bits of the story, and both of them were willing to comply. That even after Barney died, Betty was like, "Listen, I'll tell you what you want to hear. I'll tell you what you want to know. I'm not going to change my story, but just know I'm not looking for anything for this." And God bless them both. Like, I think that's what made it. That's what makes it real. That's why I think it absolutely happened to them. And the other thing that really kind of sells it for me, the fact that they were both under hypnosis and they both told the same story. Now, usually, if two people recall an incident, and it didn't happen, they're gonna, the story's gonna be different. But imagine how many people they talked to between 1961 and 19, when it happened, and up until, like, we'll say 1967. All the people they talked to, and the story never changed. It never wavered. They both said the same thing. Even under hypnosis, they both said the same thing, probably recounting more vivid descriptions and images of what happened to them. So I think that's also telling. The fact that they weren't looking for publicity, they stuck to their story. They both said the same thing, no matter how many times they were asked. As for the alien beings, the figures that took them, maybe there was more about them in the other things that I didn't read. I would be curious to know, like, what they look like a little bit more. I know they were gray. Like, how can you describe them anymore? They sound like maybe they were the grays, because the grays are the species that are known, are the alien species that are most known to abduct humans. These are the grays are the species that we all know. Whenever you mention an alien, it's the grays. In fact, I have an example. He's not exactly gray, but this is what. Imagine he's gray instead of green, but this is what most people. This would be considered a gray alien. The black oval shaped eyes, the round oval face, and this is the alien species that they most likely encountered, because the gray aliens are also, some of them, they're also, again, this is back in the 60s. The grays didn't really start abducting people until later on, like late 80s, early 90s. But that isn't to say that the grays couldn't have abducted in the early 60s. That was another type of aliens. But again, I will actually cover all the different types of aliens in another video. I do hope you enjoyed this Mystery Blue Book episode on Betty and Barney Hill, the infamous UFO couple. Do stay tuned for my next video. Next Friday, we will be back for another installment of, actually, it will not be next Friday. I have to work, but perhaps Saturday I will do that, and my episode will be on, you think I would remember because I just looked at it, but I want to make sure I get it right. The Kelly Hopkinsville Incident. This one's good. I actually wrote a small little essay on this very topic. This one is a hoot and a half. Again, I do hope you enjoyed the episode of Mystery Blue Book of Betty and Barney Hill. Typical YouTube fashion, if you like this video and you want to see anytime I go live and watch more, hit the subscribe button. It would be much appreciated. And until next time,